Welcome to episode 3 of the TarPack podcast. Today we're going to be reviewing the week 1 games between North Carolina and South Carolina. We found out who the real Carolina was in that game. And the Thursday night game between UConn and NC State, followed by previews of the week 2 games, North Carolina versus App State, and a big game, NC State versus Notre Dame, NC State being home for that one. So we're going to start off by a review of South Carolina versus North Carolina. We were personally at this game. I thought it was a really good game. Honestly, Carolina kind of dominated. I know a 14-point win isn't necessarily what you would think of when you think of dominated, but Carolina was the better team in literally every facet of the game. Carolina did a great job getting pressure on Spencer Rattler. He got sacked 9 times, which if you watch this Carolina defense any last year, you would not expect any 9 sack performances, which was great. So following that, Drake May and Spencer Rattler was a very good quarterback battle like we expected. And looking at the statistics, you would think maybe Spencer Rattler was better, but under pressure, he did a really good job. Don't get me wrong. Drake May did have 2 interceptions, but both one of them was a drop from a wide receiver, and the other one was just a bad pass. But anyways, very good high-end performance from both teams. But North Carolina dominated in the trenches, and that was the main story of this game.
Now, I'm not going to say Carolina's defensive line is the best in the world, because during that game, South Carolina's offensive line was the most garbage offensive line I've ever seen. Just every player on the whole offensive line for Carolina, defensive line, that's my fault, were just so pressured on the quarterback. They were just getting close to him every time. There's only 3 passes that Spencer Rattler had where he actually had over 4 seconds, 5 seconds to throw.
I mean, it was impressive. It was an impressive performance from Spencer Rattler. And Drake May had his own heck of a game as well. But the story really is the defensive line of Carolina. It was fantastic. Kamen Rucker, absolute beast. Amari Gaynor had 2 sacks himself. So it was just a dominant performance all around from them. Freshman corner Tayon Holloway did get picked on a little bit by Spencer Rattler throwing to Xavier Legette, who had a very, very good game. But outside of that, we looked really good, and Dre Boykins being out for the season hurts. But one other thing I want to mention before we move on from this review is that UNC didn't have Tez Walker. Tez Walker, one of the best transfer wide receivers to ever enter the portal, quite honestly. And being without him, there were a few drops that's Tez Walker. Maybe they're not drops, or maybe a few more explosive plays happen for Carolina if he's there. I think if Tez Walker plays in this game, Carolina might have won by 4 touchdowns, and they could have won by about 3 or 4 touchdowns anyways if they capitalized on a few more things. So what are your thoughts on Tez Walker not playing and free Tez?
Well, he should be freed. The NCAA is just doing dumb stuff without him not being freed, so that's all I gotta say. I don't know what the NCAA is doing, but # free Tez.
Yeah, I think he would have really helped this Carolina team. And definitely, hopefully this Thursday he's cleared. That would be really good for Carolina. If that is the case, that'll help us out a lot, especially once we get to, the meat of this schedule. So, yeah, that's the review for North Carolina versus South Carolina. North Carolina fairly dominant in this one. But a great effort from Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette. And the kicker was debatably the best player on South Carolina. That man's a stud. That onside kick was maybe the most perfect onside kick I've ever seen in my entire life. It went exactly 10 yards, and he got that thing. That was kind of crazy.
Very crazy.
All right, so let's start in the preview of the game coming up this Saturday between the App State Mountaineers and the North Carolina Tar Heels. So getting it started, this is going to be the same format we did last week. where we had position group by position group, including coaches, where we just picked what side we did think was better for each. So this game is in Keenan Memorial Stadium, by the way, at 5:30, I believe it is, which is an interesting time. You don't see that very much. But anyways, we will get started here with the quarterback battle. Excuse me. It's David Hernandez versus Drake May. This is an interesting battle here because this App State kid, he actually had a very good game in week 1, filling in for who was supposed to be the starting quarterback in not Jake Berger, that's an MLB player, but he's injured and now he stepped in. He did pretty good. So, but following that, Drake May is just outmatching him completely here. Drake May's maybe the best quarterback in the country, so I expect him to win this QB battle pretty handily.
100% agree. Drake May, one of the best QBs in the country.
All right, moving on to the running back room, led by British Brooks, who was really, really good on Saturday. O'Marion Hampton being that second guy. According to this week's depth chart, it will be Elijah Green as the third guy. We didn't really see anybody else besides like a George Pettaway for one snap out there anyways. But those are the main two. I'm really proud of British Brooks. He had a phenomenal performance, overcoming injury. Was really cool for him. So I do have Carolina. Oh, excuse me, I went backwards. I do have Carolina winning the running back battle. Although, is it David Noel? The running back for App State is very good as well. So I don't want to underestimate him, but I do give Carolina the advantage in the running back room because of how that offensive line played as well as the overall depth in the room. Wide receiver, this isn't much of a contest here. The talent is just overwhelmingly in Carolina's favor. We're going to go here. There's 3 starters last week without Tez Walker and Nate McCollum. I don't want to disrespect Nate McCollum. He's also out. Those are our top 2 wide receivers that weren't playing. I'm not sure if they're going to play this week. It shouldn't matter based on where this program is currently. But you got guys like Gavin Blackwell, J.J. Jones, Andre Green, among others that are stepping up and really good. We even got to see some Doc Chapman. So I'll give wide receiver the edge to Carolina here. Tight end, obviously Carolina's favor. The best tight end room in the country, in my opinion, belongs to Carolina. App State, never been much to utilize the tight end position in the passing game. Anyway, so I'm going with Carolina. Obviously, I want to add in this team last year played one of the best games of the season. These two teams did. I mean, incredible offense. Just no defense whatsoever from either side. Pretty much, Carolina allowed 40 in the fourth quarter. They only allowed 17 last week in the entire game, so that was impressive. But anyways, O-line, I'm going to give the offensive line edge to North Carolina. App State did lose 2 of their starters from last year, which actually is a pretty solid offensive line. If you asked me this before last week's game, I would have said App State's offensive line was better. But this Carolina team gave up 0 sacks against South Carolina, an SEC defense. So that's really impressive. Again, if you would have asked me last week, I would have said offensive line is the advantage for App State because they really are physical, but I think Carolina matches that. And I think Carolina gets the advantage here as well. D-line, obviously this is Carolina in a landslide. 9 sacks last week. Kamen Rucker, absolutely phenomenal. Dennis Evans even got his 2nd career sack. The number 2 overall player in the class of 2020, according to ESPN. In the class of 2020, absolutely insane. This D-line is a force to be reckoned with.
But as I said the first time, we really can't guarantee. We have to see them another time because, South Carolina's offensive line, we don't know if Carolina's D-line is like the best in the whole country almost, or if South Carolina's offensive line is like almost just as horrible as Carolina's last year.
I mean, it is definitely a little bit of both. South Carolina's offensive line is definitely bad, but I think quite clearly Carolina's D-line is also good. You can tell I mean, I'm telling you, if you put this D-line last year with the less experience and the lack of Ted Monachino, it's not doing what they did last Saturday.
Yeah, Carolina's defensive line is still hundreds of times better than it was last year.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. Moving on to the linebackers, another easy advantage for North Carolina. Cedric Gray and Power Eccles, one of the best duos in the country. So I like them in this matchup here. And in the secondary, Carolina's secondary was fairly good. It wasn't anything outstanding or anything. But if Dre Boykins was in there, this would be probably a very good secondary. But unfortunately, he's out for the season with the torn ACL. I am still going to give the advantage to North Carolina. Two young corners, Marcus Allen was really good. He only got targeted once in the entire game and allowed 0 yards. He was a stud. There were some growing pains for Tan Holloway at the other corner spot. But they may not have to do that necessarily. They may can put DJ Jones or a guy like Stick Lane or Caleb Cost in the star position. So Elijah Hussey can play that true corner spot like he came in to do. But we'll just see how that goes. But either way, I think Carolina has the secondary advantage. And finally, in coaching staff, we went over it last week. This Carolina team has one of the biggest group of names, at the very least, that the college football sport has to offer. I mean, Mac Brown's a Hall of Famer. Gene Chizik has won a national championship at Auburn and at Texas. Chip Lindsey is a former head coach. Our tight end coach was a former head coach in the NFL for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, that is just stacked. And the list goes on and on. So Carolina gets the advantage here. Clyde Christensen, Coach Tom Brady. I mean, it just keeps going on for Carolina's coaching staff. So it's really impressive. I like that group a ton. And so we're finally going to get into the predictions here for this Week 2 matchup. I'm going to go with Carolina pretty big here, and I know that might seem like a stretch after last year's game, but I think this team has a chip on their shoulder. They're mad about how the fourth quarter especially went last year in Boone. I think the defense steps up. I think they play really, really well, and the offense also figures things out, especially if Tez Walker is on the field. So I have Carolina pulling out the W here, 49-13. I really do think that this could be a blowout type scenario, especially given how App State didn't have the best year, especially late in the year. They did beat Texas A&M early on and played Carolina very close, but they didn't end up being the greatest of teams. So Cameron, what are your predictions on this game here?
Now I got Carolina winning 52-7, and all I gotta say is just look at last week. Last week shows it all. This is a different team. This defense is way different from last year. They're not going to give up 40-some points in the fourth quarter. It's not going to happen this year. This defense has changed so much. Drake May is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and App State is just one of those teams that doesn't have like the best team. I think Carolina's just going to run on top of them. And the only way I don't think they're going to score this many points is if they take out Drake May in like the second quarter or something, or like at the start of the second half.
They won't do it quite that quick. But anyways, let's do a quick over-under. I'm going to go over-under 3.5 sacks. I know that for some that may seem low considering they had 9 against an SEC opponent. But after watching that, the defensive coordinator at App State is going to probably force the ball out of the quarterback's hands in this game and make him spread it out. So what would you go with on over under 3.5 sacks? I'll let you go first. Over under 3.5 sacks.
Now I feel like App State is going to do. They saw the South Carolina game. I think they're going to do a lot more running with their running back and quick passes, like screen passes and stuff. Instead of throwing it deep, because they really don't got any time to throw it deep or anything. So I'm going to say under, just because of their time management, and they know they're going to be getting pressured the whole game probably. So
yeah, I think that's probably likely. I do think as the game gets later though, and App State kind of has to force things downfield to have a chance to win, I think they'll have to hold the ball a little bit longer and get the ball downfield, which will open the door for more sacks. So I'm actually going to go over here. I'm thinking like 4. But it definitely could easily be under, but I'm hoping that will be the case there. So that is it for the UNC prediction and review. Now let's get into the NC State versus Notre Dame game.
And now it's time for the NC State review of Week 1 against UConn. NC State won 24-14 against UConn. And starting with our offense, it didn't look that great, but it is a pretty new offense. A lot of key additions left last year. And, Brendan Armstrong looked more like a running back than he looked like as a quarterback. There was really no deep passes in the whole entire game. I don't even know if we threw one.
They definitely threw some.
Yeah.
I don't know if they.
I don't think he completed one, at least 30-yard pass. And now our defense. It was not great, but it was not terrible either. It was above average. Peyton Wilson actually surprisingly was probably our best defender out there.
Him or Aiden White.
Yeah. But Aiden White did not have that great of a game, if I'm being honest. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but he gave up some, passes. He gave up, a couple dots from the quarterback, so it's not really his fault, but there's a couple times where he could have done better.
I'd say it's an add-on to the UConn-NC State game. I think it was a fairly good game. NC State didn't honestly have the best performance. I'm sure they definitely have a lot to clean up. Offense looked a little bit out of sorts, and they're still putting things together. If they want a chance to win against Notre Dame this week, they're going to put stuff together fast and have a really good game plan. But yeah, it's an okay game for the Pack.
Yeah, it was very mid for the Pack. Now moving on to the preview of NC State versus Notre Dame. Starting with the QBs. Obviously, Brendan Armstrong versus Sam Hartman. Obviously, I'm going to pick Sam Hartman. You want to pick the Pack player for everything because you're a Pack fan, but you just can't. I mean, Sam Hartman's just such a better player. But the thing I think about when I see Sam Hartman is how much we pressured him the last time he came to state. And he threw 3 to 4 interceptions. I don't know the exact number. And we won the game. If it wasn't for our pressure from the defense and Sam Hartman getting pressured and throwing multiple interceptions, we would have not won that game. So, really, that's our only hope of winning that game.
That is a good point. NC State did kind of have Sam Hartman's number the last time he played in Carter Finley for Wake Forest. So that actually is a very good point. Brendan Armstrong has had his good times at Virginia. He's just got to find it here in NC State.
Yeah, and now it's time for the running back. Now, I'm going to give this to Notre Dame. Obviously, Jordan Houston is good with Michael Allen, but they're just not on the level of Notre Dame's whole talent with all the players they get in the portal and just how they develop their players.
Especially when you factor in how good the offensive line is to help out the running backs. Audric Estime has had a couple good games at Notre Dame, and that O-line definitely helps him out a lot.
Yes, and now it's time for wide receivers. Now, our wide receivers in the game against UConn did not look amazing. Now, obviously,
how many drops do you think there were in that game?
At least 4.
Maybe that sounds probably about right.
Yeah. The only consistent wide receiver on our team.
Oh, yeah, that freshman.
The freshman.
What's his name? Kevin Concepcion?
Yeah, Kevin Concepcion. He was the only consistently good wide receiver on our whole team. He was just running the best routes. Brendan Armstrong threw to him the most time, and he's a freshman, and he was getting the most targets by any wide receiver in the whole game.
A player UNC actually targeted as well, but NC State ended up landing him. So,
yes. And now it's time for the tight end. Now
Notre Dame cranks out some tight ends.
Notre Dame.
They always have really good tight ends. I mean, Trent Penix is cool, but yeah, go ahead.
They're not on Carolina's level of tight ends.
Yeah, Carolina is best.
Obviously, Trent Penix is good and stuff, but just you got to give it to Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a great tight end core.
They kind of always get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this.
And it really just makes sense because, they're a top 10 team, so you expect them to be having a great tight end core and just expect everything to be great for their team. And now to the offensive linemen. NC State offensive line has been good for years, and it was looking pretty average this year. But Notre Dame's offensive line has been just so good for so many years, and I'm going to give this to Notre Dame. Just not even close. Not even saying anything like NC State's offensive line is bad or anything. It's just Notre Dame's offensive line is so good. It's just not even a competition, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Joe Alt at left tackle is a stud.
Very much, yes. Defensive line now. Obviously, State's defensive line in this game.
The D-line's got to be a big point here. They got to really get after Sam Hartman.
Yeah. They didn't even look that good against UConn. Only
Yeah,
one
that's
sack.
concerning.
We couldn't even really pressure the quarterback that much. And obviously, Notre Dame's defensive line is very good with this pretty good State offensive line, but not nearly as close as Notre Dame offensive line. And just, I'm going to give it to Notre Dame, just way more talented defensive line. And now linebackers. Obviously, I was talking earlier about how good of a game Peyton Wilson had against UConn. He really had a great game and stuff. But Notre Dame's offensive line is just so much more stacked.
You mean linebackers?
Notre Dame's linebackers are so much more stacked than NC State's.
Yeah, I think Peyton Wilson has an argument to be the best linebacker on either team, but I don't know if they have the same number of linebackers as Notre Dame does.
Yes. And now the secondary. I'm going to give this to NC State. Just Aiden White, Shaquem Battles, and all of them. Just such a talented core. And it's just stacked to you if we could take them out when they need a breather and put in another talented cornerback or secondary player. And now Notre Dame's is very talented too.
Yeah, they got some
It's
talent.
just with Shaquem Battle and Aiden White, that's what gives State win in this category.
I do agree with that. I think NC State's got some feisty guys in the secondary. They got some absolute dogs. I think that's one category that benefits NC State in general. Just the amount of feisty, like dogs type players that NC State has. I don't think Notre Dame quite has that. They're more a disciplined play. NC State plays with their heart more, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And now coaching, Dave Doran.
Do you think Marcus Freeman's overrated? I'm not sure yet. We'll see. But he didn't have a great first year. He's recruiting fairly well, but I don't know Marcus Freeman as a coach if he's that guy at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm really not going to answer that question knowing if he's overrated or not, because we really haven't seen that much. It was his first season. Obviously, your first season can be your hardest. But obviously, Dave Doran for State,
he's got some question marks.
Is very questionable with some of his mistakes that he did against UConn too, not just in the past. He made a couple mistakes against UConn. So obviously, I'm going to give it to Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame coaching staff.
Yeah, I think Coach Dave Doran has got to start recruiting better. I mean, NC State's a place that has produced football talent. They got to start getting some better players in there. Do you agree?
Yeah, we definitely got to start recruiting better. We got to get more talented high school players and more transfers on our team.
Yes. All right. So you're going to go to predictions now?
Yes. My Cam 187 prediction. I got Notre Dame 17, NC State 14.
Low scoring.
Yes. I really have faith that our defensive line can get through Notre Dame's offensive line and pressure Sam Hartman into doing some of his mistakes that he did on Wake Forest last year against State. Now, obviously, if we can't get through the offensive line, obviously Notre Dame could definitely have way more points than this and just roll over us, because our offense against this defense and this just the almost fully new offense playing against the number 10 team in the country, I really don't think we could score more than honestly 20 some points. That's the highest.
They got to get some of those receivers to be game changers, because I don't know how well you're going to have to run the ball against NC State. Against Notre Dame. Now, one factor is the running ability of Brennan Armstrong should come in clutch because it gives you that numbers advantage that you wouldn't otherwise have. So they're going to have to utilize that, and they're going to have to. They're just going to have some wide receiver step up. The profile is there for a guy like Terrell Timmons to step up. He's just got to catch the ball and consistently get open.
Yeah. We can't just do these screen passes that we always do.
Yeah, that's not going to work against
Screen passes against Notre Dame are not going to give you what it gave against UConn, which barely worked anyways. You're not going to get to where you want to be with just screen passes. You got to start doing deeper passes, start running plays like you already do, which is fine. Let Brendan Armstrong, if the pocket starts to collapse, let him just run out of there. We saw how he could do it against UConn.
And even call some design QB draws and stuff like that.
Yes.
All right, so my prediction is going to be a little bit higher scoring than this, but still relatively low scoring for today's college football. I'm going Notre Dame 28, NC State 17. I just think it's going to be really tough for NC State with the way the receivers haven't stepped up. It's going to be tough for Carolina to score much on Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, although I think NC State's defense has some dogs and they're going to give it their all against Notre Dame, I think they'll be able to score enough to win this game. And I have it being 28-17. So a close game with both of our predictions. Notre Dame is just the more talented, better team. And that is my prediction.
Yeah, and our fan base could also come in clutch with helping us win and getting the environment more hyped and just getting the players more hyped and getting them more excited to play.
One thing I actually do want to add, Notre Dame, it doesn't get very hot in Notre Dame where they're located. It's a colder region of the United States. NC State, I don't exactly remember what the temperature is going to be in Raleigh this week, but I know it's going to be hot. It is going to be hot in Raleigh. It's going to be fairly hot, so that may be something that they can use to their advantage. If it winds up being sunny, that'll also help because maybe wear down Notre Dame a little bit more up than they would otherwise because those cold weather climates, you're not dealing with much heat. So if the heat can come in clutch for State, actually might help because this is a noon o'clock a game on ABC. Any final thoughts on this game before we head out of here?
Yeah, I just want to say I really believe State can win this game. We're just going to have the fans come in clutch. We're going to have the defense just put all their just everything they got in this game and just put everything in it. Because I remember State versus Clemson in 2021. The fans were out in so much force and everything. And that could have just honestly helped the players play more because they knew how much State fans would just enjoy a win against Clemson and how this is a number 10 team in the country, just how crazy that environment will be. We're just going to have to see how Notre Dame will react to it. Obviously, we know Notre Dame, one of those bigger schools that always just has a crazy environment themselves in every game they play, basically away or home. So, I don't know if it's really going to affect them like other teams.
NC State fans are more rowdy than Notre Dame fans, though. So,
yeah, NC State fans are almost like just SEC fans.
They are pretty similar to South Carolina fans, honestly.
Yeah, they're pretty similar to just the SEC fan bases all across the world for SEC.
All right, so before we wrap this up, I guess that's actually really it. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on episode 3 of the TarPack podcast. We really appreciate you watching. Can't wait to watch college football this Saturday. Hopefully Spectrum gets their stuff together because they're really making it hard to watch games. But anyways, we're going to make it work. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.
Thank you for watching the TarPack podcast.